I'm Olga, 32 years old, and until 6 a.m. this morning, I was a senior software engineer at Nexus Innovations. For 5 years, I built their security systems from scratch, pouring my heart and soul into every line of code. When my phone rang before dawn with an urgent request to come in, I never imagined I'd find Marcus Reynolds waiting with security guards. "You're fired effective immediately," he announced, eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "Best of luck," he sneered as they escorted me out. If you've ever been blindsided at work, drop a comment and hit subscribe as I share how I went from fired to irreplaceable in less than 3 hours. The irony of being fired from a security system I built wasn't lost on me as I drove away from Nexus Innovations that morning. My journey with the company began 5 years ago when they were just a promising startup with big ideas but minimal security infrastructure. I had just finished my master's in cybersecurity from MIT and was eager to build something from the ground up. When Thomas Walker, the CEO, pitched his vision of creating next-generation software that would revolutionize how companies protected their data, I was sold on the spot. Those first years were exhilarating. Our team was small but passionate, working crazy hours fueled by takeout and the shared belief we were creating something extraordinary. I climbed from junior developer to senior engineer, eventually leading the security division. My specialty became building ironclad systems with multiple fail-safes, earning me the nickname Fort Knox among my colleagues. Everything changed 6 months ago when Marcus Reynolds joined as our new director. He came from a competitor with an impressive resume but minimal hands-on technical experience. From day one, something felt off about him. While he talked a big game in meetings, he seemed uncomfortable whenever conversations turned too technical. Within weeks, I noticed a pattern. Marcus would sit in on brainstorming sessions saying little. Days later, he'd present our ideas to upper management as his own. The first time it happened with a minor security protocol I had designed, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. By the third time, when he took full credit for my team's database encryption breakthrough during the quarterly board meeting, it was clearly deliberate. My biggest project at Nexus was the Reliance Shield system, a security architecture I had conceptualized and built over 3 years. It was revolutionary in how it integrated biometric verification with behavioral analysis algorithms, creating what our marketing team called the unhackable shield. The truth was, no system is truly unhackable, but mine came pretty close with its adaptive learning protocols and specialized authentication patterns. Reliance Shield had caught the attention of several major investment firms, including the prestigious Blackwood Partners, who were sending representatives for a demo scheduled for today at 9 a.m. This wasn't just any presentation. It represented potential funding that would take Nexus from successful startup to industry leader. The tension between Marcus and me escalated in the weeks leading up to the demo. He began making arbitrary changes to my system architecture without consulting me, moving deadlines and reassigning my team members to other projects. Each time I voiced concerns, he dismissed them as unnecessary pushback. "The problem with you, Olga," he told me during one particularly heated meeting, "is you think this system belongs to you. Everything built here belongs to Nexus, and as director, I determine how we proceed." Technically, he was right about ownership. My work belonged to the company, but he was dangerously wrong about understanding the system. Reliance Shield had grown complex, with layers of security that interacted in ways only I fully comprehended. I had documented extensively, but certain core verification processes, the heart of what made the system truly secure, required specific authorization patterns that only I knew how to navigate. Last Thursday, things came to a head when Marcus announced major architectural changes just days before the investor demo. When I explained the changes would compromise the system's integrity, he cut me off in front of the entire team. "I didn't hire you to question my decisions," he snapped, though of course he hadn't hired me at all. I had been there long before him. "You didn't hire me at all," I responded, keeping my voice level. "And with respect, these changes will create vulnerabilities in exactly what we're trying to showcase." His face had flushed deep red. "That's enough, Olga. Make the changes by tomorrow." I stayed until midnight that night, documenting every aspect of what I was being forced to modify, creating detailed notes about the potential risks. I saved everything to my secured personal cloud storage, not to steal company property, but to protect myself if things went sideways. Just yesterday evening, while running final tests before the demo, I discovered a critical vulnerability in the modifications Marcus had insisted upon. The system's primary authentication protocol was compromised, creating a potential backdoor that any decent hacker could exploit. I immediately emailed Marcus with my findings and recommended solutions. His reply came minutes later. Stop looking for problems where none exist. Your unnecessary paranoia is delaying our progress. The system is fine as is. The demo will proceed as planned tomorrow. I went to bed uneasy, setting my alarm early so I could arrive before anyone else and implement emergency patches to protect the system from itself. I never got the chance. The call came at 5:30 a.m., jolting me from sleep. The voice on the other end belonged to Sandra from Human Resources, instructing me to come to the office immediately for an urgent meeting. Her tone gave nothing away, but something in my gut tightened with apprehension. I threw on the first professional outfit I could find, black pants and a navy blouse that I later realized was buttoned incorrectly in my rush. The roads were nearly empty at that hour, the sky still dark as I pulled into the company parking lot at 5:55 a.m. The security guard at the front desk looked uncomfortable as he checked my badge, avoiding eye contact. "They're waiting for you in the fourth-floor conference room," he mumbled, buzzing me through. When the elevator doors opened to the fourth floor, Marcus Reynolds stood waiting with two security guards and Sandra from HR. The guards held empty cardboard boxes. My stomach dropped. "Good morning, Olga," Marcus said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Thank you for coming in so promptly." He gestured toward the small conference room, and I walked in robotically, my mind racing to understand what was happening. Sandra placed a document on the table as I sat down. "Olga, as of 6 a.m. this morning, your employment with Nexus Innovations is terminated effective immediately," Marcus announced, checking his watch as if to emphasize the precision of my firing. "What? Why?" The words came out barely above a whisper. "Your inability to be a team player and persistent questioning of leadership has become detrimental to this company's progress," he replied smoothly, clearly rehearsed. "Your insubordination and attempts to undermine management decisions can no longer be tolerated." Sandra slid the termination papers toward me, her expression professionally neutral, but with a hint of discomfort. "Your final paycheck will include 2 weeks of severance. We'll need your badge, laptop, and company phone before you leave." My hands trembled as I signed, where indicated my signature barely recognizable. The security guards waited by the door boxes, ready for my belongings. This had clearly been planned in advance. My termination scheduled for the earliest possible hour before any of my colleagues would arrive. "Best of luck in your future endeavors," Marcus said, that same smirk playing at his lips as he stood to leave. He couldn't quite hide the satisfaction in his eyes. The walk to my desk felt like a dream sequence, my feet moving without conscious direction. Jake, one of the security guards, who had always been friendly during my late nights, whispered, "I'm sorry about this, Olga. Really messed up." His partner kept a professional distance, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. My desk looked exactly as I'd left it the night before. Family photos, the small jade plant I'd kept alive for 3 years, sticky notes with reminders for projects now irrelevant to me. 5 years of my professional life reduced to the contents of a cardboard box. I packed methodically, aware of Marcus watching from his office. My fingers lingered on the team photo from last year's holiday party, everyone smiling, arms around each other's shoulders, before Marcus arrived. I slipped it into my box. As I reached for my personal notebook, Jake murmured, "Electronics and documents get checked before you leave. Company policy." I nodded, abandoning notebooks filled with years of ideas. My computer had already been locked out, the screen displaying an access denied message when I attempted to log in one last time. I tried texting Rachel, my closest colleague, to explain what was happening, but discovered my company phone had already been deactivated. The thoroughness of my removal was both impressive and devastating. The final humiliation came as Jake and his partner escorted me through the empty office toward the elevator. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting long shadows through the windows. No one else would arrive for at least an hour. No chance to say goodbye, to explain, to defend myself. In the parking lot, Jake helped transfer my box to my car. "This isn't right," he said, quietly glancing back at the building. "The way they did this." I couldn't respond, my throat tight with unshed tears. I simply nodded, closed my trunk, and got into the driver's seat, sitting there long after they'd returned inside. The morning rush hour was beginning as I finally pulled out of the parking lot, joining commuters, heading to jobs they still had. Tears blurred my vision as I stopped at a red light, a wave of memories washing over me. Late-night coding sessions, breakthrough moments when particularly challenging problems were solved, celebrations when we secured new clients, the pride I felt every time I improved the system. But beneath the devastation, another feeling was growing: worry. Not for myself, but for what would happen at 9 a.m. when Marcus attempted to demonstrate Reliance Shield to the investors. After his recent modifications, and without the emergency patches I'd planned to implement this morning, the system would be critically vulnerable. Worse, the fail-safes I'd built in would likely detect these vulnerabilities and trigger protective protocols. Protocols that required my authorization to override. Part of me felt a grim satisfaction at the thought of Marcus flailing before the investors. Another part recognized that the company's future, and the jobs of my colleagues, hung in the balance. The 30-minute drive home felt endless. When I finally parked outside my apartment building, I couldn't bring myself to get out immediately. I sat in my car, head resting against the steering wheel, and allowed myself 5 minutes to cry. Hot, angry tears that left mascara tracks down my cheeks. When the timer on my phone beeped, I took a deep breath, wiped my face, and carried my box of belongings inside. My apartment felt strangely foreign in the early morning light. This was where I normally rushed around grabbing coffee before heading to work. Being here at 7 a.m. with no work to go to made everything feel off-kilter. My cat Luna greeted me with confused curiosity, unused to my presence at this hour. She wound around my ankles as I set the cardboard box on my kitchen counter and stared at it, the physical evidence of my unceremonious removal from a company I had helped build. I made coffee on autopilot, the familiar ritual, providing a momentary comfort. As the machine hummed, my personal laptop chimed with an email notification. Out of habit, I opened it. Subject: security alert. Unauthorized access attempt. Reliance Shield primary protocol. It was an automated alert from my system, forwarded to my personal email, as a final backup measure I'd implemented months ago. Someone was attempting to modify the core security protocols of Reliance Shield, exactly what I'd feared would happen. I nearly spilled coffee on my keyboard as I scrambled to open the security alert. The message contained detailed logs showing multiple attempts to modify Reliance Shield's core authentication protocols from Marcus's administrative account. Each attempt had been automatically rejected by the system, which had detected them as potential security breaches rather than authorized modifications. This was exactly what I'd warned him about in my email last night. The changes he'd already forced through had compromised the system's integrity to the point where it now identified legitimate administrator commands as potential threats. It was essentially turning against itself. A security system becoming so secure that it locked out even its own managers. The logs showed increasingly desperate attempts, with Marcus trying different override commands, none of which were working. The system was designed to recognize patterns of suspicious activity, and his rapid-fire, increasingly aggressive attempts were triggering more intense security responses. I watched in real time as a new log entry appeared. An attempt to disable the primary security protocol entirely. The system's response was immediate and severe. Critical intrusion detected. Primary admin authorization required. System lockdown initiated. In that moment, I faced an ethical dilemma that made my heart race. I could let them crash and burn. After the way Marcus had treated me, part of me wanted to watch him fail spectacularly in front of the investors. It would be the perfect revenge served without me lifting a finger. But it wasn't just Marcus who would suffer. It was the entire company, my friends and colleagues, all the other engineers who had poured their talents into building something meaningful. Their jobs and futures were tied to the success of this demonstration. I sipped my coffee, thinking about the fail-safes I'd built into Reliance Shield. When designing the system, I had created specialized authentication protocols that required biometric data, specifically my typing pattern recognition and voice confirmation, for critical overrides. It wasn't just passwords or codes. The system was literally designed to recognize me. I had documented everything about the system extensively, except certain core verification processes. Those I had kept deliberately obscure in my documentation, not out of malice, but because they contained proprietary algorithms I was still perfecting. The only full record existed in my personal secure cloud storage, and more importantly, in my head. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. When I opened it, I found a message from Rachel sent from her personal phone. "Olga, what happened? Security just said you've been terminated. Everyone's freaking out." I texted back, quickly explaining the bare minimum about my early morning firing. Her response came immediately. "That's insane." Marcus called an emergency meeting, saying you left for personal reasons. "We're all prepping for the Blackwood demo at 9. He seems confident, but the team is worried. The system's acting weird after his changes." So he was lying to the team. Typical. I told Rachel about the security alerts I was seeing. "Should I warn someone?" she asked. I hesitated before responding. My finger hovered over the screen. These people had allowed me to be escorted out like a criminal after 5 years of dedication. Did I owe them anything? "They made their choice," I typed, then deleted it. "Just watch what happens," I wrote instead. "The system knows what it's doing." I set my phone down and paced my small apartment, Luna, following at my heels. The walls suddenly felt confining. I needed airspace to think. I changed out of my incorrectly buttoned blouse into a comfortable sweater, washed the tear streaks from my face, and decided to walk to the cafe down the street. The morning was crisp, early spring sunshine, failing to completely warm the air. The cafe was busy with pre-work customers grabbing coffee before their commutes. I ordered a large latte and found a corner table, opening my laptop again to check the security logs. The situation was escalating. Multiple administrative accounts were now attempting to access the system, indicating they'd called in the IT support team. Each attempt was being logged and systematically blocked. The system was functioning exactly as I had designed it to function when detecting a potential breach. It was locking down, progressively restricting access to increasingly higher authorization levels. As 8:30 approached, my phone began buzzing continuously with texts from Rachel. "Something's seriously wrong with the system. Nothing's working. Marcus is freaking out but trying to hide it. The investors just arrived. Thomas is doing introductions while the tech team tries to fix things. System just displayed primary admin authorization required on the main screen during Marcus's introduction." His face turned purple. I could picture the scene clearly. The sleek conference room, with its wall of windows overlooking the Seattle skyline, the polished presentation that would now be derailed. Marcus sweating through his expensive suit as nothing responded to his commands. Rachel's updates continued becoming more frantic. "They've called in Diana, the CTO, but she can't override it either. Marcus just told Thomas it's a minor technical issue, but everyone can see it's not. The Blackwood guy just asked if this is representative of our security capabilities. Kill me now." A grim satisfaction settled in my stomach, mixed with genuine concern for my former colleagues. Rachel's next text included a photo of the main presentation screen, now displaying in large red text, "Critical Security Protocol Violation. System Lockdown Active." 8:45 a.m. 15 minutes until the official demonstration was scheduled to begin. Marcus just said we don't need you to fix this. Diana's face. One of the Blackwood partners just closed his laptop. Said he'll wait to see a functioning product. Thomas looks like he's about to have a stroke. 8:50 a.m. I imagined the panic in that room, the desperate attempts to save the situation, the realization slowly dawning that the person who could fix everything had been unceremoniously fired 3 hours earlier. They're asking for your number. Should I give it to them? I stared at Rachel's text for a long moment. Did I want to be their savior after being treated as disposable? Did I want to give Marcus the satisfaction of being right, that the system couldn't function without me proving his point, that I'd made myself indispensable? But this was bigger than Marcus, bigger than my bruised ego. This was about the company I had helped build, the colleagues who had become friends, the product I was genuinely proud of. Give them my number, I texted back. 8:55 a.m. My phone remained silent. Either they were too proud to call, or Rachel hadn't passed along my number yet. I refreshed the security logs once more. The system was now in complete lockdown mode, with a message I had programmed myself: critical security breach attempted. All functions restricted pending primary administrator verification. 8:57 a.m. My phone rang with an unknown number. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Hello? I kept my voice deliberately neutral. Olga, this is Thomas Walker, the CEO himself sounding harried and desperate. A visiting partner looked at the board and simply closed his laptop. The CEO's eyes locked on his team with panic. Thomas. I acknowledged, fighting to keep my voice steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through me. How can I help you? Olga, we're having some technical difficulties with the Reliance Shield system, he said, his usual confident tone replaced with barely concealed panic. The team thought you might be able to assist. I see, I replied, taking a slow sip of my latte. That's interesting, considering I'm no longer with the company as of 6 a.m. this morning. There was a moment of stunned silence, followed by muffled conversation on his end. I could make out Thomas asking someone, likely Marcus, what I was talking about. Olga, there seems to be some confusion. Thomas returned to the call. I was told you had taken personal leave. No confusion at all, I replied calmly. I was fired. Marcus had security escort me out this morning while informing me of my inability to be a team player and persistent questioning of leadership. I believe those were the exact phrases. More muffled conversation, Thomas's voice rising slightly, before he clearly stepped away from others to speak privately. I had no idea, he said, his voice lower now. This is the first I'm hearing of this. But Olga, we have a situation here. The entire Blackwood Partners team is in our conference room, and the system is completely locked down. Diana says it's asking for primary admin authorization, and none of the override codes are working. My laptop screen showed new alerts appearing in real time. The desperation of their attempts was evident in the rapid succession of failed authorization entries. The system is behaving exactly as designed, I explained. When it detects potential security breaches, like someone trying to modify core protocols without proper authorization, it initiates protective lockdown procedures. Can you fix it? Thomas asked, directly, desperation evident in his voice. I can, I confirmed, but I'm not sure why I should given the circumstances. Olga, please. Thomas's voice dropped to an almost whisper. There are 5 partners from Blackwood in this room. This funding round represents the future of Nexus. That's over 200 jobs, including people you've worked alongside for years. A flurry of texts from Rachel appeared on my phone. Oh my God. Thomas is on the phone with you. Marcus looks like he's about to explode. One of the Blackwood partners just checked his watch and whispered something to his colleague. Diana just said, "Only you can fix this." I took a deep breath. Thomas, I need you to understand something. The issues you're experiencing aren't just technical glitches. They're the direct result of the changes Marcus insisted on implementing against my explicit warnings about system vulnerability. I understand, he said quickly. Whatever happened, we can discuss it after we resolve this crisis. Name your terms, Olga. Full reinstatement effective immediately. I began surprising myself with my boldness. A promotion to Chief Security Officer reporting directly to you, not Marcus. And I want Marcus to publicly acknowledge my work on Reliance Shield to the Blackwood partners. Done, Thomas agreed without hesitation. All of it. Just please help us salvage this demonstration. I checked the time, 8:59 a.m. The official start time for the demonstration was seconds away. Put me on speakerphone, I instructed, standing from my cafe table and throwing cash down for my barely touched second latte. I want everyone in that room to hear this. The quality of the call changed as Thomas activated the speakerphone. I could hear multiple voices in the background, then silence as they realized who was on the line. Good morning, everyone, I said clearly. This is Olga, the primary architect and administrator of the Reliance Shield system you're about to see demonstrated. Olga, this is highly inappropriate. Marcus's voice cut in strained but attempting authority. We have technical staff here who can handle this. Clearly you don't, I countered, or you wouldn't be calling me after firing me this morning. The silence that followed told me the investors were now fully aware of the situation. Good. Let me explain what's happening. I continued now, walking briskly back toward my apartment. Reliance Shield is designed with multiple layers of security, including protection against internal threats. When someone attempts to modify core security protocols without proper authorization, especially after multiple warnings about system vulnerability, it triggers automatic defensive measures. Can you fix it remotely? This from a voice I didn't recognize, presumably one of the Blackwood partners. Yes, but I need visual confirmation of who's in the room first, I said. Thomas, please initiate a video call from your phone to this number. Seconds later, my phone buzzed with a FaceTime request. I accepted, finding myself looking at a conference room full of tense faces. Thomas held the phone, panning it slowly around the table. I recognized the Blackwood team from their professional headshots on the company website. Jerome Blackwood himself, his chief technical officer, and 3 other partners. They looked more intrigued than annoyed, which was a good sign. Diana, our CTO, gave me a subtle thumbs up from her seat. Rachel and my other team members stood against the wall, expressions mixing relief at seeing me with anxiety about the situation. And there was Marcus, standing stiffly by the presentation screen, still displaying the red warning message, his face, a mask of barely controlled fury. Thank you, I said. I can fix this remotely, but I want to be clear about what happened. This system lockdown isn't a malfunction. It's a security feature responding to unauthorized modifications that compromised system integrity, modifications I explicitly warned against in an email to Marcus last night, which he dismissed as unnecessary. Paranoia. All eyes in the room turned to Marcus, whose complexion had gone from red to nearly purple. That's completely false, he sputtered. This is clearly a sabotage attempt by a disgruntled ex-employee. Jerome Blackwood leaned forward, his distinguished gray eyebrows raising slightly. Young lady, are you saying you can still control this system despite no longer being employed here? Not control, Mr. Blackwood, I corrected. The system is operating autonomously based on security protocols I designed. What I can do is provide the authorized emergency recovery commands that only the primary administrator, previously me, can execute. Jerome exchanged glances with his colleagues, looking oddly impressed rather than concerned. The clock shows 9 a.m., I noted. Your demonstration was scheduled to begin now. I suggest we proceed with my assistance, after which we can address the management issues that led to this situation. Thomas nodded vigorously. Yes, please proceed, Olga. I switched to my laptop, fingers flying over the keyboard as I established a secure connection to the Nexus network using emergency protocols I'd built for precisely this type of situation. I'm going to need someone to read me the specific error code on the bottom left of the screen, I instructed. Diana leaned forward, reciting the alphanumeric sequence. Thank you, I said, continuing to type. I'm now initiating emergency recovery mode. The system will require voice verification, so please keep the line open. The screen in the conference room changed, now displaying voice verification required. Reliance Shield Primary Administrator Override Alpha 79 Delta Echo. I spoke clearly into the phone. Authorization Olga Petrov. The screen immediately responded. Voice pattern recognized. Primary Administrator verified. Awaiting security challenge response. I answered 3 complex security questions that appeared on the screen, questions only I would know the answers to based on specific system architecture decisions I had made during development. With each correct response, the red warning text faded, replaced by the normal system interface. System restored to secure operational status, the pleasant automated voice announced. Welcome back, Administrator Petrov. The relief in the room was palpable, even through the video call. Thomas's shoulders visibly relaxed, and Diana broke into a smile. Marcus remained frozen, his expression unreadable. The system is now operational, I confirmed. You may proceed with the demonstration, but I strongly advise against attempting any further modifications to the security protocols without proper authorization and testing. Jerome Blackwood leaned toward the phone camera. Miss Petrov, I find myself more impressed with your security system now than I might have been with a flawless demonstration. It actually prevented unauthorized modifications, exactly as one would hope a security system would do. Thank you, Mr. Blackwood, I replied. That's precisely what it was designed to do. Perhaps, he continued, glancing at Thomas, we should be hearing more about this system from its actual creator. I completely agree, Thomas said quickly. In fact, Olga will be rejoining us immediately as our new Chief Security Officer. Marcus, I believe you have something to say. All eyes turned to Marcus, who looked like he'd swallowed something extremely unpleasant. I closed my laptop, slipping it into my bag as I called for an Uber. I'm on my way, I told Thomas, the speakerphone still active. I can be there in 20 minutes. Perfect, Thomas replied, relief evident in his voice. We'll take a short coffee break until you arrive. He turned to address the room. Gentlemen, shall we reconvene in 30 minutes? Our staff will show you to the executive lounge. As the Blackwood partners stood, Jerome Blackwood's voice carried clearly over the phone. Fascinating turn of events, Walker. I'm actually more interested now than I was before. The call remained connected as people moved around the conference room. I could hear Marcus attempting to interject, his voice tight with forced professionalism. Thomas, may I speak with you privately before? Not now, Marcus. Thomas cut him off sharply. We'll discuss your decision-making process later. Right now, my priority is salvaging this presentation. I ended the call and climbed into my Uber, mind racing. In the span of 4 hours, I had gone from fired to apparently being the new Chief Security Officer. The vindication was sweet, but the emotional whiplash was intense. During the ride, texts from Rachel kept coming. You absolute legend. Marcus tried to follow Thomas out, but got shut down hard. Diana is beaming. Says she always told Thomas, you should be CSO. The Blackwood guys keep asking about you, seem impressed by the whole thing. I arrived at Nexus 20 minutes later, my heart pounding, as I approached the building I had been escorted from just hours before. Jake, the security guard, did a double take as I walked in, his professional composure slipping. Miss Petrov. But I thought, things have changed, Jake, I said with a small smile. I believe Thomas Walker is expecting me. Jake made a quick call, then nodded and returned my badge, which apparently hadn't been deactivated yet. Mr. Walker says to send you straight up. They're gathering back in the main conference room. The elevator ride felt surreal. Employees I passed in the hallway did double takes, a few breaking into spontaneous grins and thumbs-ups. Word traveled fast in tech companies. Rachel was waiting by the conference room door, practically bouncing with excitement. She threw her arms around me in a quick, fierce hug. You have no idea how satisfying it was to watch Marcus squirm, she whispered. He tried to blame IT, then the servers, then suggested we'd been hacked. Thomas appeared in the doorway, extending his hand formally, but with genuine warmth in his eyes. Olga, thank you for coming in so quickly. The Blackwood team is eager to hear about Reliance Shield from its actual creator. I shook his hand, keeping my expression professionally neutral, despite the triumph singing through my veins. Happy to help, Thomas. Should we discuss the terms we agreed to before we proceed? Already in motion, he assured me, leading me into the conference room. HR is preparing the paperwork for your reinstatement and promotion. We can make it official after the presentation. The conference room had transformed in my absence. The energy was different. The tension of crisis replaced with anticipation. The Blackwood partners sat on one side of the long table, Diana, and the technical team on the other. Marcus stood awkwardly near the back wall, looking distinctly out of place. Thomas guided me to the head of the table, a position Marcus would normally occupy. Gentlemen, I'd like to properly introduce Olga Petrov, the true architect of Reliance Shield, and our newly appointed Chief Security Officer. The recognition sent a wave of satisfaction through me. I shook hands with each of the Blackwood partners, Jerome Blackwood, holding my gaze with shrewd assessment. Quite an entrance, Miss Petrov, he commented. I must say, seeing your security system actually prevent unauthorized access, even from inside the company, was more convincing than any prepared demonstration. Thank you, Mr. Blackwood, I replied. Reliance Shield was designed with the understanding that security threats often come from within organizations, not just external attackers. Indeed, he nodded appreciatively. Please show us what your system can do when it's not actively preventing tampering. I moved to the presentation computer, logging in with my credentials, which surprisingly still worked. The familiar interface welcomed me now, fully functional and responsive. From the corner of my eye, I saw Marcus shift uncomfortably, clearly uncertain of his role now. Before we begin, Thomas interjected, I believe there's something that needs to be addressed. He turned pointedly to Marcus. Marcus, would you care to share with our guests your assessment of Olga's contributions to Reliance Shield? The room went silent, all eyes turning to Marcus. His face cycled through several emotions before settling into a tight professional mask. Of course, he said, his voice strained. Olga is the primary architect of the Reliance Shield system. Her expertise has been invaluable to its development. The words clearly cost him, each one dragged out reluctantly. And regarding this morning's events, Thomas prompted, not letting him off the hook. Marcus swallowed visibly. I made a decision this morning regarding Olga's employment that was premature. I failed to fully appreciate the implications for the system's functionality. That's one way of putting it, Jerome Blackwood commented dryly, earning chuckles from his colleagues. Thank you, Marcus. Thomas said crisply. You may observe the remainder of the presentation from the back. Effectively demoted in front of everyone, Marcus retreated to a corner chair, his former confidence entirely evaporated. I turned to the presentation screen, now firmly in control. Gentlemen, Reliance Shield represents a new paradigm in cybersecurity architecture. Traditional systems focus primarily on keeping threats out. Ours assumes breach as inevitable and focuses instead on containment, detection, and response. For the next hour, I guided the Blackwood team through Reliance Shield's capabilities, demonstrating how it could identify and isolate potential threats, adapt to new attack vectors, and protect critical data even when parts of the system were compromised. The irony wasn't lost on anyone that they had witnessed a real-world demonstration of exactly these capabilities earlier. The partners asked intelligent, probing questions that I answered with confidence, occasionally deferring to Diana or my team members for additional technical perspectives. Marcus remained silent throughout, his earlier authority completely undermined. As I concluded the technical portion of the presentation, Jerome Blackwood leaned forward. Miss Petrov, I'm curious. The authentication system that prevented unauthorized changes earlier, is that standard for all installations? Or was that specific to your internal version? It's a core feature, I explained, though typically configured with multiple administrators, not just one. Our internal development version was set up with stricter controls to prevent accidental corruption of the code base. Ingenious, he nodded. And the biometric voice recognition, one of several authentication factors available. The system can be configured to recognize typing patterns, voice prints, behavioral patterns, or traditional credentials, with multiple factors required for critical actions. The technical discussion continued for another 30 minutes, growing increasingly detailed and enthusiastic. The Blackwood team's initial skepticism had transformed into genuine interest, with their technical officers taking extensive notes. Finally, Jerome sat back in his chair. I believe we've seen everything we need to. Thomas, shall we discuss terms? Thomas stood beaming. Absolutely. Olga, thank you for an excellent presentation. Would you mind giving us the room for the business discussion? I gathered my notes, exchanging a quick glance with Diana, who gave me a subtle thumbs up. As I walked toward the door, Jerome Blackwood called after me. Miss Petrov, one moment. Would you be available to join us for dinner tonight? I have some additional questions about potential applications in the financial sector that I'd love to discuss further. I would be honored, Mr. Blackwood, I replied, catching Marcus's incredulous expression from his corner seat. Excellent. We'll see you at 7 then. He turned back to Thomas. You've got quite a talent in Miss Petrov. I suggest you do whatever necessary to keep her this time. I closed the door behind me, stepping into the hallway where Rachel and the rest of my team waited anxiously. Well, Jason asked. I think we just saved the company, I replied, finally allowing myself a full, genuine smile. The team erupted in hushed cheers and backpats, conscious of the ongoing negotiations behind the closed door. As we moved toward the break room to debrief, I glanced back at the conference room, still processing the remarkable reversal of fortune that had unfolded in just 3 hours. From fired at 6 a.m. to irreplaceable by 9, the morning's humiliation had transformed into a triumph I couldn't have scripted better myself. The celebrations in the break room were just getting started when Thomas burst in his face, glowing with excitement. They're in, he announced, looking directly at me. Blackwood is committing to the full funding round with an additional allocation, specifically earmarked for expanding the Reliance Shield development team. The room erupted in cheers, the tension of the morning finally breaking. Team members hugged each other, relief and joy palpable in the air. Thomas made his way through the crowd to stand beside me. Olga, I can't begin to apologize enough for this morning, he said, lowering his voice so only I could hear. I had no idea Marcus had taken such drastic action. We'll discuss it, I replied, keeping my tone professional, despite the vindication coursing through me. What happens now? First, we formalize your position, Thomas said decisively. HR is preparing the paperwork as we speak. Chief Security Officer reporting directly to me with a substantial compensation adjustment to reflect your true value to this company. Diana joined us, champagne flute in hand, from the impromptu celebration someone had organized. About time, she said, clinking her glass against my coffee mug. I told Thomas months ago, you should be on the executive team. And Marcus, I couldn't help asking, though. Part of me didn't care as long as he was out of my way. Thomas's expression hardened slightly. We'll be discussing his future with the company in private. For now, he's been relieved of his duties overseeing the security division. He'll be focusing on other areas. The diplomatic response told me everything I needed to know. Marcus wouldn't be fired. That would be too public an acknowledgement of a serious mistake, but his authority and influence would be severely diminished. The celebration continued around us, as Thomas excused himself to make phone calls, likely informing board members and other executives about the successful funding round. Diana stayed by my side, as colleagues came by to express their relief at my return, and congratulations on the promotion. You should have seen Marcus's face when the system locked down, Jason told me, gleefully mimicking an expression of panic. He kept saying it was impossible that he had administrative override privileges. Technically he did, I explained, but the system is designed to recognize patterns of behavior, not just credentials. When it detected multiple aggressive attempts to modify core protocols, it classified them as potential threats rather than authorized changes. So basically, your security system outsmarted him, Tyler grinned. It did exactly what it was designed to do. I corrected, though. I couldn't help returning his smile. As the celebration continued, Rachel pulled me aside, her expression more serious. I saved copies of all your documentation, she whispered. After you were escorted out, Marcus asked it to clear your drives. I made backups before they could. My throat tightened with emotion at her loyalty. Thank you, I managed. That could have been catastrophic. I knew something was wrong, she shrugged. The way he announced you were suddenly gone. It didn't add up. By noon, the office had returned to some semblance of normalcy, though with an undercurrent of excitement about the successful funding deal. I found myself in what would become my new office, a corner space with windows on two sides previously occupied by a vice president who had left months earlier. Diana helped me settle in, bringing a potted plant from her own office as a housewarming gift. So dinner with Blackwood tonight, she commented. That's a big deal. Jerome doesn't usually take such personal interest in the technical side. I got the impression he was genuinely intrigued by the security model. I replied, arranging the few personal items I'd retrieved from my old desk, particularly after seeing it in action this morning. Sometimes disasters turn out to be opportunities in disguise, Diana mused, though I wouldn't recommend getting fired as a career advancement strategy. We both laughed, the stress of the morning finally dissipating. The afternoon passed in a flurry of meetings, official reinstatement paperwork with HR, a detailed debriefing with Thomas about the current status of all security projects, and a team meeting to realign priorities after the successful funding round. Marcus was conspicuously absent from all of these discussions. When I finally glimpsed him late in the afternoon, he was exiting Thomas's office, looking subdued and avoiding eye contact with everyone he passed. At 5:30, I took a break to go home and change before the dinner with Blackwood partners. As I drove, I reflected on the extraordinary reversal of fortune the day had brought. From the crushing blow of being fired to the triumph of saving the demonstration and securing both the funding and my new position, all within 12 hours. My apartment welcomed me differently now than it had that morning. What had felt like a place of defeat now felt like a temporary stop on the way to something better. Even Luna seemed to sense the change, greeting me with extra affection as I quickly showered and changed into a more formal outfit for dinner. The restaurant was one of Seattle's finest, with sweeping views of the Sound. Jerome Blackwood greeted me warmly, introducing me to several partners who hadn't been at the morning presentation. Throughout the meal, the conversation flowed between technical discussions of Reliance Shield's potential applications and more general industry trends. What impressed me most, Jerome commented, over dessert wasn't just the technical sophistication of your system, but the foresight to build in protection against internal threats. Most security focuses exclusively outward. The statistics are clear, I replied. A significant percentage of security breaches involve insider access, whether malicious or inadvertent. Ignoring that vulnerability leaves a massive blind spot. Precisely why we're interested, he nodded. Financial institutions face exactly this challenge, sophisticated external threats, but also the internal risk from employees with legitimate access. As coffee was served, Jerome became more direct. Blackwood doesn't just provide funding, Ms. Petrov. We look for opportunities to create strategic partnerships. I believe your security architecture could be transformative for several of our portfolio companies. By the time dinner concluded, we had outlined potential collaboration opportunities that extended well beyond the original funding discussion. Jerome's parting handshake was firm, his expression reflecting genuine respect. I look forward to working together, Ms. Petrov. I suspect this is just the beginning of a very productive relationship. Driving home, I called Rachel to share highlights from the dinner, both of us marveling at how drastically the day had turned around. What had begun with the worst professional humiliation of my career had transformed into perhaps my greatest triumph. As I finally crawled into bed that night, exhausted but exhilarated, my phone pinged with a final text from Thomas. Contract signed. Funding secured. Board is thrilled. Your new office will be ready tomorrow. Thank you for saving us all today. I smiled in the darkness, thinking of Marcus's smug expression that morning as he fired me. Best of luck, he had sneered, never imagining how quickly those words would come back to haunt him. Just before sleep claimed me, I sent a quick reply to Thomas, looking forward to tomorrow, and every day after that. The weeks following that fateful day brought a whirlwind of changes, both professional and personal. My first official act as Chief Security Officer was conducting a comprehensive review of the entire Reliance Shield architecture, documenting the modifications Marcus had attempted and strengthening the system against similar vulnerabilities. Thomas and I had a lengthy private meeting my second day back, where he apologized profusely for the firing debacle. I should have been informed about any termination decision, especially for someone of your caliber, he admitted. Marcus overstepped his authority significantly. Why did you hire him in the first place? I asked the question that had bothered me for months. Thomas sighed. Politics primarily. He came highly recommended by a board member, had an impressive resume, and we were scaling rapidly. I needed someone to manage the growing security division, and your strengths have always been technical rather than managerial. And now we recognize that technical expertise is exactly what that position needed, he acknowledged. Marcus has been reassigned to business development, where he'll have no direct reports and no access to critical systems. In other words, a glorified sales position with a fancy title but minimal influence, the corporate equivalent of being put in a corner with a dunce cap. My new role came with significant autonomy. I reported directly to Thomas, bypassing the traditional chain of command, and had final authority over all security architecture decisions. My salary nearly doubled, with substantial equity compensation added to reflect my critical role in securing the Blackwood funding. The team's reaction to my return and promotion was overwhelmingly positive. Most had been uncomfortable with Marcus's leadership style from the beginning, and my dramatic reinstatement became something of a company legend. Rachel was my strongest ally through the transition, having proven her loyalty during the crisis. During a private lunch the following week, she revealed more about what had happened after my firing. The minute I heard you were gone, I knew something was wrong, she explained. Marcus called this emergency meeting, saying you had decided to pursue other opportunities, which made zero sense to anyone who knows you. So you started saving my documentation. She nodded. I copied everything I could access before IT locked down your accounts. Marcus was desperate to proceed with the demo, without you insisting everything would work fine. When Diana questioned whether the system might need your authorization for certain functions, he dismissed her concerns completely. Classic mistake, I remarked, assuming the documentation tells the whole story. Exactly. He didn't understand that you were the only one who truly comprehended how all the components worked together. She grinned. The look on his face when the system locked down and displayed primary admin authorization required, absolutely priceless. Over the following month, my relationship with the Blackwood partners flourished. Jerome became something of a mentor, introducing me to his extensive network of technology executives and security professionals. What had begun as a simple investment deal evolved into strategic partnerships with several financial institutions in their portfolio, creating new market opportunities for Reliance Shield. Marcus faded into corporate obscurity, rarely seen in the executive wing, and never at strategic planning meetings. When our paths occasionally crossed, he would nod stiffly and quicken his pace, avoiding direct interaction. His humiliation had been public and complete, his judgment questioned at the highest levels of the company. Perhaps the most profound change, however, was in my own approach to my career. The experience of being fired and then reinstated with greater authority forced me to reflect on how I had been operating professionally. For years, I had poured myself into the technical aspects of my work, assuming that excellence would speak for itself. I had documented meticulously, but kept certain knowledge exclusive, not out of malice, but from a combination of proprietary pride and ongoing development. That approach had nearly backfired catastrophically. One evening, about a month after the incident, Diana and I were working late, reviewing security protocols for a new client implementation. "You know," she commented, closing her laptop, "what happened with Marcus taught us all something important. The company had become dangerously dependent on your individual knowledge." "I've been thinking about that," I admitted. "It wasn't intentional, but I did create a situation where I was a single point of failure." "A common trap for brilliant specialists," she nodded. "You build something so complex that only you truly understand it. Great for job security, until someone like Marcus comes along and decides that makes you a threat." Her observation was uncomfortable but accurate. While Marcus had been wrong to fire me, I had inadvertently created the conditions that made him feel threatened by my specialized knowledge. "I'm implementing changes," I told her. "Creating a knowledge transfer program, mentoring junior engineers, establishing clearer documentation protocols. Building systems that can survive without you." Diana smiled. "The mark of a true leader,